Welcome into 5 Wide Fantasy. Today, we're looking at draft strategy for the early rounds of your fantasy football drafts. That's rounds 1 to 5. This is a strategy that I put together where we're going to talk a bit about each position, how I feel about each position in the first 5 rounds of your draft, and then ultimately some players I think are great to target round by round, 1 through 5. This is a strategy I think is going to put you in a great position to win your league. Just by making those picks in the first 5 rounds, it's going to give you the chance to reach for some upside and find some players that could really smash their ADP in these middle and late rounds and give you a lot of comfortability with your roster heading into those tougher parts of your draft. So we'll be starting with the running back position. And honestly, the running back position is where your general strategy comes from at the start. For me, the hero RB strategy is what I like. Hero RB is basically taking one running back in the first, for a lot of people, it could be the first 5 rounds, and having that running back kind of being the mainstay of your roster and being able to build out at other positions, more specifically the wide receiver spot, and even if you like to, which we'll get into, the quarterback and tight end spot. So the reason I like this strategy is because I find there are a lot of question marks with some of the backs in the 3rd to 5th round. So, for example, some of these guys to me, Jahmyr Gibbs, can he be good enough for you at his current ADP to return value if he isn't scoring touchdowns? Because I don't think he will. Najee Harris, will he continue to get great volume and opportunity if Jaylen Warren continues to be as good as he was last season? Will this Matt Canada offense for the Steelers take another step, or will we see Matt Canada's offense continue to struggle to score points? Breece Hall, can he overcome the narrative that comes with the torn ACL? Will he be on the field in the early parts of the season? Will they add another back? J.K. Dobbins, I have a lot of doubts with J.K. Dobbins as a guy going in the 4th and 5th round of your fantasy drafts of, is he going to be able to be as valuable as he's been in seasons past when he is on the field with this offense having such drastic changes coming their way when it comes to their run and pass splits? So these are some guys I'm really concerned about. It has me wanting to attack other positions in these rounds 3 to 5 of my drafts. I'll talk about some running backs you could take if you're a little bit more comfortable with going with 2 running backs in your first 5 rounds. I know a lot of people don't really believe in this whole hero RB or zero RB strategy, so I'll still talk about some of these guys. But I do think, and we'll get to in future videos, the big thing for me is that there are running backs you can take in rounds, I would say a few in round 5, but more in rounds like 6 and 7 and 8 that I do feel good about as players that are really worth their value and could return significantly for you that other people don't love, but I really do. So make sure you tune into that video when we get to it. Guys, if you do enjoy today's video and the rest of what we get to, be sure to hit that subscribe button, like the video, let me know what your strategy really is heading into your fantasy football drafts. Hopefully some of you have your picks ready to go and know where you're going to be drafting. We'll be helping you out with all that stuff. Let's go to wide receiver. So for me, wide receiver is a position where there just generally is just much less risk attached to a lot of these players going in the first 5 rounds. And for me, when I look at previous seasons, let's just go to last year, for example. So let's talk about some of the top 24 running backs. Those guys are absolutely going in the first 5 rounds in seasons past or even this year. Those guys are going in the first 5 rounds that really tanked your drafts, that potentially for you, your season could have been over if you took some of these guys. Jonathan Taylor. DeAndre Swift was a top 10 pick last year. He could have really crushed you. Javonte Williams and his injury. Cam Akers was on the wire in a lot of leagues by the middle of the season. Sure, he had a great finish, but if you drafted him, you might not have had him at the end of the year. J.K. Dobbins was a player that was confident he was going to play and be on the field for you. He wasn't. Elijah Mitchell obviously had injuries, and then CMC came in. He wouldn't have been a great pick for you. And then A.J. Dillon and Clyde Edwards-Helaire were just some of the worst picks in fantasy last season. So there's a lot of guys. That's what am I listing here? 8 players in the top 24 that really could have crushed you. Then you look at the wide receiver position. That story isn't the same. There's only about 4 guys I could come up with that really tanked on their ADP. Deebo Samuel last year missed time with injury, but also just was competing with a lot of mouths to feed in the latter half of the season when he was on the field that he really didn't return value. Michael Thomas ran into yet another injury. He was a player that a lot of people would take a flyer on, expecting to have some high upside. He was good when he played, but he didn't play very much. Cortland Sutton and that Broncos offense tanked, and Brandon Cooks didn't quite have it seemed like motivation, to be quite frank with you, with this Texans team. You could argue that Mike Williams and Keenan Allen didn't return their value, but when they were on the field, they were scoring like 13, 14 fantasy points per game. So injuries, we talked about a little bit with a guy like Javonte Williams, but I mean, these receivers were just, if they were on the field, they were still good and very good for you and still could help you win weeks. So receiver, even guys that I don't like that much, I still see great floors for. Like I talked about CeeDee Lamb in a video. I'm a little bit concerned about the volume that comes his way with some added competition and potentially some changes in the offensive philosophy. He's still going to post 120 targets, I think, on the year. Davante Adams, he's another new quarterback who doesn't want to push the ball down the field. Will there be enough there for him? He's still going to see 120 targets on the year, I'm confident. T. Higgins, I don't think has the upside, but I mean, year in and year out, he's still able. He's not going to be as like the wide receiver. He's like 14, 15. He's still probably going to finish inside the top 20. DK Metcalf, red zone machine. I know Jackson Smith and Jigba steps in, but he'll still be their guy in the red zone. DJ Moore, I'm not sure there's enough volume in this offense, but Moore is going to post a 25+% target share, so I don't think he absolutely tanks. So wide receiver is where I want to go in these early rounds because these guys have great floors for you, but also I think these are players, as you move into more of these PPR formats, that can be more valuable to you because they're also on the field. A lot of these running backs can miss time. Tight end. Tight end is a spot for me where Travis Kelce's ultimately the only guy I've really drafted when I've been running my mock drafts. He's my 7th ranked player behind. So my order would be Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase. Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Christian McCaffrey, Cooper Kupp, Bijan Robinson, Austin Eckler, and then I want to take Travis Kelce at 7. There could be some times, depending on how I feel about the other, because a lot of times you can go into the draft and you kind of know where the rest of the league sees positional value. A lot of them are like, we're crushing. I'm in a couple leagues where I know they're going to just be crushing running back right off the hop, and other leagues where I know they're going to be looking more towards the wide receiver spot. So there are times when I could reach a little bit more on Kelce, like in a league that's really heavy on the running back spot. I know guys like Eckler, Bijan, and CMC will be gone, and maybe I take Kelce because I know I'll get some really good wide receivers in round 2 that I can pass on those guys. So make sure you're getting a feel for how the draft goes. But ultimately, a guy like Mark Andrews, I do want, but he's going in too pivotal of an area of the early parts of the draft at the 2-3 turn. If he was more in the middle of the 3rd, I'd probably have more shares of him. But there are some really good options here in this area. Garrett Wilson, Jalen Waddle, I love at the wide receiver spots going around there. And then as well, even on the other wide receivers that come around, I'm reaching on Devontae Smith. I love Devontae Smith. Chris Olave is another. But then if I don't take running back, a Bijan Robinson in round 1, let's say, I'm looking at, a Tony Pollard or Ramondre Stevenson in that 2-3 turn. So I find that I'm definitely not going after guys like a Kyle Pitts or who am I missing that's going earlier, or George Kittle. Those are players I don't find myself drafting. I'm not too high on, or TJ Hawkinson. I just don't see enough here to be, when I'm drafting a tight end this early, I want to see a potential guy like a George Kittle or a Mark Andrews that I know could separate from the pack. I struggle a bit to see that unless a lot of luck goes their way when it comes to touchdowns with those other guys. So that's how I see the tight end spot. Now at quarterback is a really interesting situation coming into this year. We've seen it drastically move from years past where the guy who was taking quarterback in the early rounds you thought was a big idiot. You kind of saw him as a guy that was like, I remember I did this when I first started playing fantasy football. I drafted a running back, I drafted a wide receiver, and then I was like, okay, I'm going to fill out the tight end spot, and then the quarterback spot, I'm going to fill out all my positions, and then I'll go back and draft these guys again. But now that's really changed. The quarterback spot has seen a significant move in terms of how people value them in fantasy football. And I don't completely agree. But last year we did see some separation of the top 4 guys. If you look at the fantasy finishes last year that I got up on the screen, we've got Mahomes all the way to Burrow was really high level. That Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, and Hurts tier. And then we had a 50-point drop off to Geno Smith. So is that what we're going to expect to be the norm? I don't think so. I'm not taking quarterback in the first 3 rounds. I just think there's far too much risk in taking these guys, especially in round 2 with Mahomes and Allen. where it puts more pressure on, I need to hit on these. First off, I need to hit on these guys. And actually in the last 10 seasons, the QB1 in ADP hasn't finished as the QB1 overall. But if I take these guys early, I really need to hit on whatever I'm sacrificing, whether my RB2 that's going in round 5 or 6. I really need to hit on my wide receiver 3 that's going around 5 or 6. So I think it's a position that I'm really not looking to take that early. Not to say I won't take him in the first 5 rounds, because I think there's about 8 quarterbacks that could finish as the QB1. Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, Justin Fields, and then I think Deshaun Watson can do it as well, because I've seen what he can do in this league just a couple of years ago, and I do think this Browns offense is going to be really, really good this year. Then there are a couple other guys that I think maybe they can't finish QB1, but I could see them have a top 4, top 5 season and are going outside of these first 5 rounds, and Trevor Lawrence and Tua Tagovailoa, because Tua led the league in yards per attempt, and then Lawrence managed to cut his interceptions in half, double his touchdowns last year. Who knows what year 2 is like with Doug Peterson. So I'm not as comfortable reaching that early, but I don't mind Lamar Jackson on the 3-4 turn. I don't mind Justin Fields and Justin Herbert late. Late in round 4, because I do see there's some positional drop off at the other spots where I could address these guys. All right, we're going to wrap things up here with a little rapid fire on round by round. I'm going to tell you some of my favorite targets in each of these rounds, and obviously we're going to go off of this based on this hero RB type of philosophy I have, but we'll also do a little bit here of like, if I'm not afraid to go 3 wide receivers right off the hop, which we'll kind of talk about, that then I maybe go 2 running backs in rounds 4 and 5. So here's what I'm looking at for round 1. I talked about the order in which I like those kind of top 7 guys, but what I'm doing here is I'm looking for either Bijan Robinson or Nick Chubb as my hero RB guys to start with. Those are the targets for me. Chubb, if I'm in the later rounds, Bijan, I'm willing to reach up all the way until probably like pick 5. Again, depending on the league, you can usually get an idea of how people value the position. Otherwise, though, I'm probably looking to start wide receiver, or tight end wide receiver with a Travis Kelce like we talked about. So the wide receivers I'm looking for, Justin Jefferson, Cooper Kupp, Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, and then even in the later parts, I still don't mind A.J. Brown as well. So that's what I'm looking to do in round 1. Again, Kelce is a player that I'm absolutely willing to start with as well. In round 2, I'm reaching for some of my favorite guys. So this is where I'm probably looking to grab the wide receiver, especially if I grabbed Bijan Robinson or Nick Chubb, I'm definitely going wide receiver. Some of the guys I'm reaching for, these are 2 of my favorites. I have well ahead of what ADP has them at in terms of their ranking at the wide receiver spot. Amon-Ra St. Brown is, for me, as the days go by, he's getting closer to my top 5 in terms of wide receiver rankings. He's one I'm reaching for, and Garrett Wilson is another that I'm reaching for. So those are 2 guys I really like. Jalen Waddle's another I'm taking in that back half of the second round, or even I'm willing to take in the middle parts. But if you're in the late second, I would have recommended taking a Justin Jefferson or a Jamar Chase. The turn there, you could add I'm okay with a hero RB strategy that's a Tony Pollard or Ramondre Stevenson. Those are 2 guys right now. So long as they don't add any other guy to compete with them, I like them as hero RB guys in round 2 on that turn. Now, round 3. So there are a few players in round 3 where I'm willing to, if I took, let's say I went with let's say I went Cooper Kupp and then I went Amon-Ra St. Brown or Garrett Wilson start. There's a couple guys I'm still willing to go wide receiver again. Or if I went, let's say, Travis Kelce and Garrett Wilson, I'm still willing to go wide receiver again if a couple of these guys are still available. The big ones to me are Devontae Smith, who I love, I'm reaching on, and Chris Olave. Those guys available in round 3 and you're picking, I'm taking those guys. I'll reach on them as my round 3 third wide receiver already or second wide receiver with a tight end. Now, a couple others that I'm willing to take as well would be Lamar Jackson in the late 3rd. It would definitely need to be late 3rd if I'm a guy on the turn. And then if I'm looking to go a running back, I like Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is a player going more in the early 4th. I love Aaron Jones' opportunity here with a change at quarterback. He's going to see plenty of receptions. A.J. Dillon has not been very good or was not very good last season. Could he earn more of a role in the red zone? And then I think this team will throw the ball more in the red zone and inside and goal-to-go situations compared to last year, which will automatically give Jones more opportunities, I think, regardless, even if Dillon has the bigger share of those areas. So those are some of the guys I'd go late 3rd. Now, round 4 Round 4 is the potential of adding a litany of different players in my mind. You could go any which direction here. One that I'm reaching on as well at the running back spot. Again, if you went 3 wide receivers to start, running back would be where you probably want to go in round 4. I feel like I can get Joe Mixon whenever I want in round 4. This is a really good offense, a lack of competition in the RB2 spot. Mixon's a player that you could go at probably anywhere from like the middle to end, like pick 8 in round 4 all the way to pick 1. I'd be comfortable with taking him. Other ones, Justin Fields in the latter half of round 4 to get that quarterback. And then Amari Cooper is a player going late in round 4 that I would basically take anywhere. He's a top 12 wide receiver for me. So these are basically Mixon and Cooper are 2 players you could probably get any time in round 4 that I'm reaching for. And then Justin Fields is a player, and Justin Herbert's another guy that in round 4 I'm willing to go to the quarterback spot if they're available in that latter half to really get me some nice positional advantage, because it's really nice in the later rounds to be able to set the table to not even look at quarterback the rest of the way. Round 5, there's a lot of different ways to go here. I think, again, if you're in the 3 wide receivers or a tight end and 2 wide receivers in the first 3 picks, the running backs I'm willing to go to. If I want to go 2 running backs in the later half, I'm looking at Miles Sanders and Alexander Mattison. Those are 2 players that I think are set for really, really high volume roles. That's kind of my theme here in rounds 4 and 5 with Aaron Jones, Joe Mixon, Alexander Mattison, and Miles Sanders. Sanders has posted a 50 reception season in his career, obviously. We know that from his rookie year. And then Alexander Mattison steps into a role where the RB2 spot for the Vikings is completely up in the air. There's not a lot of faith they have. Madison should get plenty of touches in an offense that loves to run the ball inside the 5. Dalvin Cook was 3rd in inside the 5 carries last season with 17, so Madison's in for a great opportunity there. And then some wide receivers I like. Chris Godwin is one I think should see plenty of volume. Mike Williams is someone that's going a little bit later, but I probably wouldn't reach on him quite there, but Chris Godwin's kind of my target in round 5 as well. That is how I see the early parts of your fantasy drafts going in terms of strategy, how you should be approaching it, and then some of my favorite targets. Again, we'll be having more videos like this coming up over the next week or so. We'll look at the middle round. So if you're watching this video, you're probably going to want to get an idea of how to approach those middle rounds of your draft as well. So don't miss our middle round draft strategy, our late round draft strategy coming up. So be sure to hit that subscribe button, get those post notifications on. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you on the next one.